1857. Today we are going to see a topic on social conditions in the 19th and somewhat in the 20th century. So we are going to focus on the social reforms or social conditions, okay, the society of India. uh, Many things that are coming in UPSC GS paper 1, and also that is for the mains, and also sometimes it comes in the prelims. Some important personalities like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then we have the movements like Deoband movement and Theosophical movement and Brahmo Samaj. We have Jyotiba Phule. So all these people played a major role in the social scenario of India in the 19th and the 20th century. So we are going to cover that today. Okay. So let's start with the lecture. So social reform movements focusing on 19th century. What was India in the 19th century? We'll just see how was India in the 19th century. You'll get a fair idea of India in the 19th century. This section is mostly neglected by the students, but you must understand this section is very important for your essays, for your GS paper 1. If you want to write a very good answer or essay, or if you want to have a wholesome idea on the questions asked, you should be able to at least know. You don't have to by heart each and everything, but you should know what was the society in the 18th, 19th century, because the society later was transformed, and this also led to changes. Okay, so just remember this is a neglected section, but you have to know or understand this section nicely. Social conditions in the 19th century. The impact of British rule was quite different from the rulers, that is, most of the earlier intruders who came to India and settled in India. Okay, so earlier intruders who came to India and settled in India, they became part of Indian society. Okay, so they were assimilated in the Indian society. They created a composite culture. So because of the assimilation of the people from West Asia, Central Asia, and the other parts of Europe, Greeks, these people came and they assimilated, or they lived in India and they became part of it. But the Britishers came to go back. They didn't come here to become part of India. Their motive was to earn a lot of money, okay, that is through revenue, okay, and trade. Second motive was to consolidate or increase their empire and exploit the resources. Okay, so this is the only motive because of which they came to India, and they never planned to live in India. They always were planning to go back. Okay, so you must remember the society during the British rule was not impacted, or you can say it was not that the British came to change the people over here. Okay, so just remember that. So earlier intruders who came to India and settled in India and were assimilated by India's superior culture. 18th century Europe had experienced novel intellectual currents and created the age of enlightenment. Now we know during 18th century in India, we were still a traditional Orthodox society, but in Europe, so okay, so you must remember 18th century Europe, there was enlightenment ideas which were spreading. Okay, so just remember this, enlightenment. Okay, so enlightenment ideas included like freedom, liberty, fraternity, and all the other human reason, humanity, rationalism. So this in scientific revolution, these things were all enlightenment ideas. So enlightenment ideas were spreading in Europe, but India remained a traditional orthodox society. There was a development of scientific revolution in Europe. Okay, in contrast to Europe, India presented a picture of stagnant civilization and a decadent society. So Indian society was stagnant and decadent. Okay, so you must remember the difference between European culture, European society vis-a-vis Indian society in the 18th century. So European society was enlightenment based society, or enlightenment ideas were increasing, whereas Indian society was a decadent society. Okay, thus some educated Bengali youth like the Derosians. Okay, so the Derosios or the Derosians, led by Henry Vivian Derosio, who was very radical. He wanted India to have some radical modern ideas, or to grow, or modernity to come to India. But there was some problem with the method that they followed. Okay, so these Derosians developed a revulsion against Hindu religion and culture, gave up old religious ideas and traditions, and deliberately, see, they gave up old religious ideas and traditions and deliberately adopted practices most offensive to Hindu sentiments. Their intention was good, so that modernity should come to India and we should be having enlightenment ideas. But the way they did it was not proper. They did it by creating a reaction against the Hinduism, or against Hindu religion. Okay, that is by drinking wine and eating beef. This was not liked by majority of the society. And if you do these things, it will create a backlash. Okay, so this was not the method or the way to that was liked by the society that time, which the Derosians followed. But you must remember, the Derosians wanted to modernize the Indian society, but the method was wrong that they followed. So there are, see, as we know, the Indian society was decadent and static. So we know there are people going to come who want to modernize India. The methods you must remember. So first is by the Derosians. Okay, this is the method that they followed. Second is more mature minds like Rajaram Mohan Roy were certainly stimulated by Western ideas and Western values, but refused to break away from Hinduism. Rajaram Mohan Roy, like the Derosians, also wanted the Indian society to be modernized, but he wanted to do it within the fold of the Hinduism. Okay, so we'll see how exactly he does it, but you must remember, this is the second method of modernizing Indian society. The third one was to deny the superiority of the Western culture and prevent India from becoming a colorless copy of Europe. This neo-Hinduism preached that Europe had much to learn from the India's spiritualism. So on one side you have the Derosians, and on the second extreme you have the, you can also call this as revivalist, okay, who want to go back to ancient India or Indian tradition, saying that Indian tradition had more to give to the European culture. So just these are the two extremes, and in the middle we have Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, so he is the first modern man of India, so very important role played by him. And this side we have extreme of attacking the Hinduism or Hindu culture or Indian culture, and the second side we have complete neglect of the European culture. So these are the extremes. Okay, and this is the middle path that was taken by Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, so you have to remember this. So three methods. I hope you have understood the three methods. Okay, let's continue further. The new scientific outlook, keywords you should know during 19th century. The new scientific outlook, the doctrine of nationalism and humanism particularly impressed the English educated class. Okay, so the new scientific outlooks, there was scientific revolution in Europe, nationalism, there was no India as such, as we had discussed in the last lecture. So all this impressed the educated, the newly educated class. The new concept of secularization was born. So state and the religion should be away from each other. That is, secularization was born. The magic wand was moved by rationalism. These are the key words you should remember. How the Indian mind was getting impressed by the new English or new European, or you can say Western ideas. That is new scientific outlook. Then you have doctrine of nationalism, secularization, rationalism that emerged of a tendency to regulate individual religious and social life in accordance with the principles of reason, and discard traditional beliefs and practices which cannot the which cannot stand the test of modernity. So the key words you should remember: there was new scientific outlook, doctrine of nationalism, secularization, rationalism. Rationalism means reason. Okay, we follow our reason rather than believe in superstitions. So all this was considered as important, and this was very or impressive, or the Europeans, these European values were influencing the mind of young Indians. Okay, this brought change in the concept of pollution and purity. Our society was a caste-based society. Caste was considered important. Pollution and purity. There was a concept of untouchability, lower caste. Okay, pure. So all this was dominating our society. So this concept had to be faded away slowly. The result was birth of many social religious reforms movement touching almost every section of Indian society. So this was just a background. Let's come to the social reform movements. I hope you have understood. So the overview, you must understand, our society was traditional, backward, decadent, but in the European society there was enlightenment ideas based on nationalism, rationalism, scientific outlook, modernity. Okay, so all this you have to remember. Let's see what are the categories of reform movements. Okay, so we saw the background for reform movements. Let's see what are the categories. Reformist, first was the reformist, second was the revivalist. Reformist like Brahmo Samaj and Aligarh movement. Second is revivalist, Arya Samaj and Ramakrishna movement, mission and Deoband. Now reform means staying in Hinduism, they want to reform Hindu culture or Hinduism. Whereas revivalist means they discard the new European values, as well as they discard the bad or the decadent values of Hinduism. They want to go back to the pure form of religion. For example, the Vedas. Okay, so they completely negated everything European, Indian, they negated, but they wanted to go back to the Vedas, ancient, pure form of religion. Whereas reformists want to reform, they were focusing on modernity. So this is reformist and revivalist. Okay, the question can come, what is reformist or revivalist in the prelims? The only difference between the two is degree to which they relied on tradition or on reason and conscience. So this was the only difference between the two, the degree. Okay, so the revivalists were completely traditional, whereas the reformists were following modern. Okay, same way reason and conscience. Revivalist mostly on tradition, dogmas, superstition, whereas the reformist was modernity, rationalism, reason, scientific. So all these things you must understand. Another significance was their emphasis on both religious and social reforms. Okay, so they both had different views on religious reforms and social reforms. The reason was due to, so what was the reason because of all this? Okay, so why was this difference in the reformist and the revivalist? The first reason was almost every social custom and institution in India derived sustenance from religious injunctions and sanctions. Okay, so whatever problems we had in our social customs and religion, it was actually because of the religion. Okay, so the social customs and rituals had its base in religion. So the reformists said, let's reform the religion. Whereas the revivalist said, let's reform the social customs and traditions. Okay, so this is why they had difference. Okay, second is Indian reformers well understood the close interrelation between different aspects of human activities. Rajaram Mohan Roy, for example, believed that religious reforms must precede demand for social reform or political rights. This is very important by Rajaram Mohan Roy. Rajaram Mohan Roy focused on religious reform. He said, let this reform happen first, then we can focus on social and political reform, because Indian society was influenced by religion. Okay, so we just saw the two categories of reform movements, reformist and revivalist. We saw the reason why. Okay, our society is based on religion, and some reformers say, or revivalists say, we want social reform, some say religious reform. Now let's see what are the various types of movements. The first movement is the Brahmo Samaj. Now we'll see Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, so he's called as the Raja. Okay, his name was Ram Mohan Roy, but later he is given the title as Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He was the founder of Brahmo Samaj. He was a well-read man, intellectual, intelligent, and had learning or inclination on learning. He studied Oriental languages like Arabic, Persian, Sanskrit. So Eastern languages like Arabic, Persian, and Sanskrit, and attained proficiency in European languages like English, French, Latin, Greek, so and Hebrew. So by learning these languages, you must understand he was able to understand these societies, what were the problems in the society and what were the good points of the society. So language is important to know the society. While he defended Hinduism against the hostile criticisms of missionaries, as I told you, he was a reformer. He didn't want to go out of the fold of the Hinduism. He wanted to reform Hinduism, did not attack it, and he defended it from the criticism of the Christian missionaries. He sought to remove abuses that had crept into Hinduism. So he wanted to reform the Hinduism. He criticized idolatry, supported his viewpoint by quotation from the Vedas. Now this is an important. So what did he use to reform Hinduism? He actually used the Vedic literature. Okay, so to reform the religion, he used the Vedic literature. Unlike the Derosians, who were attacking the Hindu culture and Hinduism, the Brahmo Samajists were actually using the Vedic literature. So this is an important point. Okay. He interpreted Hindu doctrines and found ample spiritual basis for his humanitarianism in Upanishad. He also used Upanishads to get his reform movement in Hinduism. He used Vedas, he used Upanishads. He started a campaign for abolition of sati. Very important role played by Rajaram Mohan Roy, 1829. Okay, Prohibition of Sati Act was passed. It is because of the efforts of Rajaram Mohan Roy. Condemned polygamy. Polygamy is many marriages by one man. Okay, so a man having many wives, polygamy. So he condemned polygamy. He denounced casteism and advocated rights of Hindus to remarry. Okay, so widow remarriage. He promoted widow remarriage. He wanted to abolish, or he was against casteism, and India was a patriarchal society where men were considered, or men are considered to be the head of the family. So that is why there was polygamy, which also was condemned by Rajaram Mohan Roy. Okay, he rejected Christianity and denied the divinity of Jesus Christ. Okay. You must understand one thing. He liked Christian principles, okay, but the problem was he was against the miracles of Jesus Christ in the Bible. Okay, so he denied the divinity of Jesus Christ. Okay, he accepted humanism of Europe. Thus, he sought to effect a cultural synthesis between East and West. So he liked the principles of the West, but he did not give up the tradition and culture of the East. So he wanted the mixture of East and West. Okay, so get the best of the East and West. Ramon Roy accepted the concept of one God. Okay, so just remember these points. Language, he had reforms, he was focused on reforms, Vedic literature, Upanishad, East and West. Concept of one God as propounded by Upanishad. Okay, as we know, there were many gods in Hinduism. So he said that this was leading to divide within the religion. So he was focused on concept of one God, so that unity can be brought among the Hindus. Okay, in 1828 he founded Brahmo Sabha, later renamed it as Brahmo Samaj. So remember, this date can come in your prelims. 1828 Brahmo Sabha, later named as Brahmo Samaj. The opposition to idol worship. He did not accept idolatry, he rejected idol worship. There was no place for priesthood. The worshipper prayed through the prayers and meditation and reading of Upanishad. So he did not let, or he was against the intermediaries. Okay, so earlier he trying to reform the decadent principles or the backward principles in Hinduism, a new religion. He only wanted to get rid of the evil practices. Only a limited intellectual and educated Bengali intellectual supported the Brahmo Samaj. Did the society support the Brahmo Samaj in totality or in large number? No. Answer was only limited intellectual and educated Bengali intellectual supported the Brahmo Samaj. The Orthodox Hindus led by Radhakant Dev started the Dharma Sabha. Okay, so Brahmo Samaj, remember, 1828. Okay, then you have Dharma Sabha, which is by Radhakant Dev. Okay, which is to counter the propaganda of Brahmo Samaj. Rajaram Mohan Roy died in 1833. So Brahmo Samaj, you must remember some dates that you should know. Brahmo Samaj is 1828. Okay, and to counter this, there is Dharma Sabha by Radhakant Dev. Okay, so remember these names and these organizations. Okay, which is important for your prelims. Okay. And in 1833, Rajaram Mohan Roy died. He was the first modern man of India. So you must remember, first modern man of. So he was considered the first modern man, and he played a role in social as well as religious. Later we'll see in political situations also, and a lot of contribution to history in society was given by Rajaram Mohan Roy. So remember this; it's very important. Later, the leadership was taken by Devendranath Tagore, who joined Brahmo Samaj in 1842. After Rajaram Mohan Roy died, Devendranath Tagore is important. So Radhakant Dev is against Brahmo Samaj, but Devendranath Tagore is a pro Brahmo Samajist, and he joins Brahmo Samaj in 1842 to infuse new life into the Brahmo Samaj. Earlier, Devendranath Tagore headed the Tattva Bodhini Sabha. So remember, Rajaram Mohan Roy Brahmo Samaj, then you have Radhakant Dev Dharma Sabha, then you have Devendranath Tagore Tattva Bodhini Sabha. Later he joins Brahmo Samaj, which was engaged in spiritual truth. Under Devendranath's leadership, Brahmo Samaj spread outside Bengal also. Okay, so three organizations we have seen: Brahmo Samaj, Tattva Bodhini Sabha, and anti-Brahmo Samaj, if we can say, Dharma Sabha. Okay, by Radhakant Dev. Now we'll see what happens in Brahmo Samaj. Okay, Kesav Chandra Sen, he joins the Brahmo Samaj in 1858. Devendranath Tagore is 1842, and here you have Kesav Chandra Sen in 1858. Devendranath appointed him as Acharya of Samaj. Soon after that, energy, vigor, and persuasive eloquence of Keshav popularized the movement. He was young, so that is why energy, vigor, and persuasive eloquence of Keshav popularized the movement. Keshav was liberal and cosmopolitan in outlook. He had a modern outlook, broad outlook, but this brought about split in the Samaj, because Devendranath used to think that Keshav Chandra Sen was too broad, you must understand, and it was not the right time to be so radical in the reforms. The reforms should go step by step. This was what Devendranath Tagore was thinking, but Keshav Chandra Sen was talking about fast reforms, which was not liked by Devendranath Tagore. So just you have to remember, Devendranath Tagore and Keshav Chandra Sen had some differences. Religious scriptures of all religions started being read. Brahmo Samaj was actually focused on Hinduism, but in Keshav Chandra Sen's time, religious scriptures of all the religions was being read. He was very modern and he was very broad in the outlook, as I told you. And Keshav spoke against caste system and promoted intercaste marriages. For these radical reasons, Devendranath Tagore dismissed Keshav in 1865. So he joins in 1858 and he is dismissed in 1865. Keshav and his followers led the present body and formed the Brahmo Samaj of India in 1866. So you have Brahmo Samaj formed in 1828. Okay, then you have Brahmo Samaj of India in 1866. So remember these dates. And again, to revise, Dharma Sabha, okay, which was by Radhakant Dev. Devendranath led Brahmo Samaj was called as Sadharan Brahmo Samaj. Okay. Now, when Brahmo Samaj of India was made by Keshav Chandra Sen, Devendranath formed Sadharan Brahmo Samaj. Okay, this is by Devendranath. Okay, so Brahmo Samaj by Rajaram Mohan Roy, Brahmo Samaj of India by Kesav Chandra Sen, and Sadharan Brahmo Samaj by Devendranath Tagore. So just remember these. So 1828, 1866, this also 1866. Okay, so remember these dates and the organizations. So its overall contribution can be summed up. It discarded faith in divine avatar. So it did not believe in superstitions, rituals, symbols. It denied any scripture could enjoy status of ultimate authority, transcending human reason and conscience. Okay. So this is about the Brahmo Samaj of India. So they discarded faith in avatar, so idolatry. This was what Brahmo Samaj was also saying. It denied any scriptures could enjoy status of ultimate authority, transcending human reason. So they more focus on human reason and conscience. So they didn't believe anything just because it is written somewhere. It denounced polytheism and idol worship. This is already discussed. It criticized caste system. We have already seen it. It took no definite stand on doctrine of karma and transmigration of soul. So this was the basic feature of Brahmanism, doctrine of karma and transmigration of soul. This was the basic feature in Brahmanism, and it took no definite stand. It said, let the people decide, let the individual decide. So as reason and conscience was Brahmo Samaj's main principle. So just remember, discarded avatars or idolatry, idol worship, polytheism, reason and conscience is important. Criticize caste system, doctrine of karma and transmigration of soul was left to the individual Brahmos. So such points can be asked in UPSC. What was the impact or what was the result of Brahmo Samaj? So these points you should know. Okay, these are some conceptual things. Now we have seen Brahmo Samaj was in Bengal. Okay, Brahmo Samaj. Then you have Sadharan Brahmo Samaj and Brahmo Samaj of India. Now let's see how these ideas were spreading in Maharashtra. Okay, Brahmo ideas also spread in Maharashtra, which was by Prarthana Samaj. The Paramhans Sabha spread the Brahmo ideas in Maharashtra in 1849. Okay, in 1867, under the guidance of Keshav, we know Keshav Chandra Sen was removed in 1865, and he forms Brahmo Samaj. So, under his guidance in Maharashtra, the Pratna Samaj was established in Bombay. So, again, another organization that you should know, Pratna Samaj. They never looked at and thought of a new religion, but movement within the Hinduism. This is what Rajaram Mohan Roy always did. Worship of one God, again coming from Brahmo ideas, and social reform was the aim. They relied not on confrontation, what education, but so you must remember they didn't want to confront the orthodox traditional people, but educate them, persuade them. Okay, prominent leaders were M.G. Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar, and N.G. Chandavarkar. Okay, so M.G. Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar and N.G. Chandravarkar. So they are important for Prarthana Samaj. So remember this another organization that we saw. So we saw Brahmo Samaj, now we have seen Prarthana Samaj. And later Brahmo ideas also spread in Madras, Punjab. Okay. Now coming to Arya Samaj. So we have finished with the Brahmo Samaj, now we'll see Arya Samaj. The Arya Samaj movement was outcome of reaction to the Western influence. Now you must remember, the Brahmos are reformist. Arya Samaj is leaning towards revivalist. Okay, so we had seen what is the difference. So these are key words or keywords that you should remember. It was revivalist in form but not in content. So it was leaning towards but not completely revivalist. Mool Shankar, popularly known as Dayanand, was born in a Brahmin family of Gujarat. So you must have heard about Dayanand Saraswati. His name was Mool Shankar, okay, from a Brahmin family. His father was a great Vedic scholar, and this Vedic teaching was spread to Mool Shankar, and that is why Dayanand said, "Go back to the Vedas." Okay. For 15 years, Dayanand wandered as an ascetic in the whole of India, studying yoga. So yoga is one of the famous Indian philosophy, 6 Indian philosophies. One of them is yoga. So he was studying yoga for 15 years. It's quite a long time. Okay. 1875, he formally organized the first Arya Samaj unit in Bombay. Okay. Brahmo Samaj is 1828. Arya Samaj is 1875 by Dayanand Saraswati. So first it was Bombay and later it was established in Lahore. Dayanand's ideal was to unite India religiously, socially, and politically. So you must remember, see, they are both Rajaram Mohan Roy and later Dayanand. Both are talking about social unity or social reforms, but it is leading to political reforms. So they wanted India to unite religiously, socially, and nationally. Aryan religion to become a common religion of all. His object was classless, casteless, society free from foreign rule. So he denounced foreign rule, and he was against the attacks of Christian missionaries. His motto was "Go back to the Vedas." We had just seen his dad or his father was a Vedic scholar, and this was imparted on him also. And he said, "Go back to the Vedas." Okay. He disregarded the authority of later Hindu scriptures like the Puranas. He said that Vedas are pure and Vedas are very supreme, you can say. Okay, and he disregarded the Puranas. Dayanand condemned idol worship. Same, we know this was also followed by Brahmo Samaj and preached unity of God. Same monotheism. Brahmo Samaj also said there should be unity of God. His views were published in his famous work Satyarth Prakash. This is important for your prelims. His famous work was Satyarth Prakash. Dayanand launched a frontal attack on the numerous abuses. So, what was he trying to change in Hinduism? So, idolatry, polytheism, many gods, belief in magic, charms, rituals, etc., casteism, etc. That had crept into Hindu religion in the 19th century. Dayanand held that God, soul, matter, were distinct eternal entities, and every individual had to work out his own salvation in the light of eternal principles governing human conduct. Now, what is the importance? He said, God, soul, matter, all are distinct. Okay, they are all different, and every individual should fight for his own salvation, moksha. Okay, and that is why he spoke, there is no destiny nor there is karma. He only said that you should, every person was born equal and everyone had to fight for their own salvation and work towards it by their own deeds. So this was what was said by Dayanand Saraswati. So he was indirectly propagating equality, oneness of the people, not oneness of God and matter and soul. Okay, he accepted karma but rejected fate. He accepted karma but rejected destiny, fate. He said that everyone could work and get their moksha. There was nothing destined, pre-planned. Okay, so you must remember this concept, very important. Okay, so there is nothing pre-planned or destined. Everyone works and gets his own moksha. He challenged the position of Brahmins and condemned caste system. So through this idea comes this effect was he challenged the position of Brahmins, because we know caste system was on the basis of birth, not on the basis of profession, occupation or deeds, but on the basis of birth, which was challenged by Dayanand Saraswati. He believed that Varna was on the basis of profession, just now we discussed. Okay, he was advocate of equal status, so equality is given focus by Dayanand Saraswati. Sarcastically, he also said Hindu race is children of children, so he was challenging the child marriage. So child marriage was completely so Dayanand Saraswati was completely against child marriage. So what did he say? Sarcastically, Hindu race is children of children. So this was criticism by Dayanand Saraswati. Now he said back to the Vedas, but this does not mean going to Vedic times. It means Vedic learning, not Vedic times. So in the Vedic period, we know there was the status of women reduced, exploitation, caste system, all this was there. Okay, so he was not talking about going to the Vedic times, but he was talking about a Vedic learning, which he considered pure and superior. He accepted modernity and patriotic attitude to national problems. So he didn't completely discard modernity and patriotic attitude. 10 principles was given by Arya Samajist in Bombay letter accepted in Lahore. So there were some principles given. Phenomenal work was done in social reforms and education. Okay, so the DAV institutions, you must have heard about the DAV schools. They are Dayanand Vedic schools. So the DAV institutions, sorry, yeah, Dayanand Vedic, sorry, Dayanand Anglo Vedic institutions. So the DAV institutions are Dayanand Anglo Vedic institutions. Okay, they spread over length and breadth, and they taught to diffuse knowledge and dispel ignorance. So we know knowledge or information is power, and Dayanand wanted to diffuse knowledge and to remove ignorance. The nucleus was kept by Anglo-Vedic school established in Lahore. So DAV was actually kept in Lahore in 1886, and DAV imparted best modern and classical Indian studies. Gurukul Pathshala was set up in 1902. So remember, the DAV institutions was by Dayanand Saraswati, and it was to give the best of modern and Indian classical knowledge. So to dispel ignorance. And Gurukul Pathshala is, you have to remember, Haridwar in 1902. There were some negative points of Dayanand Saraswati. What was it? The Arya Samajists started the Shuddhi movement. Okay, negative points in sense this led to the non-Hindus being getting away from the Arya Samaj or the ideas of Dayanand Saraswati. The problem was the Shuddhi movement to convert non-Hindus to Hinduism. It produced leaders like Lala Hansraj, Pandit Gurudutt, Lala Lajpat Rai. Okay, so these were the leaders who were DAV and the Arya Samajists created. And political India for Indians. So by Arya Samajists. Thus it was taking part in political movement also. So just see the influence and the significance of the Arya Samajist. It also played part in the political we saw the Arya Samaj. Now we'll see the Ramakrishna movement. Okay, Brahmo Samaj by Rajaram Mohan Roy 1828, Arya Samaj 1875, Dayanand Saraswati, and from that we have institutions like DAV schools and Gurukul Pathshala, etc. Now Ramakrishna movement. Teaching of Ramakrishna mission are based on ancient and traditional concept amidst increasing westernization and modernization. It was conceived and founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1897. So Ramakrishna movement is by Swami Vivekananda 1897. Ramakrishna Paramhans, who was the teacher of Swami Vivekananda, was the Buddhist at the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar near Calcutta. He emphasized that, see how broad the ideas were. He emphasized that Krishna, Hari, Ram, Christ, Allah are different names of the same God. So the idea was broad. Okay, his thinking was deeply rooted in Indian thought and culture. So you must remember ancient and traditional concepts were followed in Ramakrishna mission. The RK mission, Ramakrishna mission recognized image worship. Okay, so they recognized image worship, whereas Brahmo Samaj and the Arya Samaj essential spirit, not symbols and rituals. So spirit is important, not symbols and rituals. Vivekananda emerged preacher of Neo-Hinduism. So Vivekananda had a very broad outlook and he preached Neo-Hinduism. Attended Parliament of Religions held at Chicago in 1893. Very important. Okay, Parliament of Religions. You should remember, this question can be asked. It was held in 1893, where he was the only person who, when starting his speech, used the word leaders of other religion, they used ladies and gentlemen and other salutation, whereas Vivekananda used brothers and sisters. So this was where we have it is like a reflection of Hinduism, which sees everyone as brothers or everyone from all over the world as brothers and sisters. So you must remember Parliament of Religion held in 1893. Okay, he denounced untouchability and caste system. Okay, same you have Brahmo Samaj as well as Arya Samaj denouncing untouchability and caste system. He spoke of service of humanity. Okay, so service of humanity was important. Vivekananda never gave political message. We had seen before this Arya Samaj as well as Brahmo Samaj. There was an intent of political unity and to give a political message, but not Vivekananda. message. Through his speeches, he infused sense of pride in India's past, faith in India's culture, and self-confidence in India's future. So pride in India's past, this is what we should have as Indians. We should have pride in India's past, faith in India's culture, and self-confidence in India's future. Should be this statement is very important. Okay, and Vivekananda always gave focus on strength. He negated weakness. So this is just a additional thing you should remember. Weakness. Okay, so he negated weakness. He was against weakness. Okay. So we saw Brahmo Samaj, then we saw Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, then Ramakrishna Mission 1897, then Theosophical Movement. It was founded by Westerners who drew inspiration from Indian thought and culture. So Theosophical Movement, we had seen the earlier movement by Indian foreigners. That is, Madam H.P. Blavatsky laid the foundation of the movement in US in 1875. Later, Colonel M.S. Olcott of the US Army joined her. So two names, H.P. Blavatsky and M.S. Olcott. Remember these two names, okay? And in 1875, okay? You have Arya Samaj also, okay? So just remember these two dates. In 1882, they shifted headquarters into India at Adyar in the outskirts of Madras. So this is current Tamil Nadu, okay? And during that time, it was the Madras Presidency. So just remember these names: Theosophical Movement, H.P. Blavatsky, M.S. Olcott, and which is in Adyar. The members of this society believe that special relationship can be established between person's soul and God. Okay, so they focus on spiritualism. Okay? So spiritualism was focused. Okay, and Hinduism. Okay, so by contemplation, prayer, revelation, etc., the society accepted Hindu beliefs in reincarnation, karma, and draws inspiration from Upanishad, Yoga, and Vedanta school of thought. They are the Indian philosophies. Okay, 6 Indian philosophies. Some of them are Upanishad, Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta. So just remember these. The Theosophical movement came allied with Hindu Renaissance. Okay, so they are trying to renew or revitalize or make the Hindu culture or Hinduism, give it a new fresh outlook. Okay, Hindu Renaissance. Mrs. Annie Besant, this is important. So we have seen H.P. Blavatsky and M.S. Olcott. Now, third foreigner who is going to join, Mrs. Annie Besant. Very important. She is important for Home Rule League and Home Rule movement. But she's also taking part in social reforms in India. Was elected president in 1907 after death of Olcott. Early in her life, she was inspired by Indian thought and culture, and her approach was Vedantic, as is evident from a remarkable translation of Bhagavad Gita. She translated Bhagavad Gita. Annie Besant laid the foundation of Central Hindu College in Banaras in 1896. Again important. Central Hindu College in Banaras in 1896, where both Hindu and Western scientific thoughts were taught. This later came to be Banaras Hindu University in 1916. So remember, Central Hindu College in Banaras was by the efforts of Annie Besant, and today this is considered to be one of the top universities in Banaras Hindu University. She also worked for female education and also started Home Rule League on the lines of the Irish Home Rule movement. So around 1916 we have the Home Rule League, Home Rule movement, which is by Annie Besant. So she played a role not only in political but also in social movement in India. social movement in India. Again, the impact of theosophical society was to small section of westernized class. So till now, what did we read? We saw the background of Indian society in the 19th century. What was the categories of movement, that is reformist and revivalist, and the various movements. We saw Brahmo Samaj, we saw Arya Samaj movement, we saw the theosophical movement, and the Krishna mission. Okay, so these we concentrated on this. Brahmo Samaj by Ram Mohan Roy, Ram Mohan Roy, Arya Samaj by Dayanand Saraswati, Theosophical movement by the foreigners, that is Blavatsky and Olcott, and Ramakrishna mission by Swami Vivekanand. So I hope you realize these things. Okay. Now we'll see the Muslim reform movements. Okay, so it was not the Hinduism alone which was impacted by the Enlightenment ideas and European ideas. It was also the Muslims or Islam which was impacted by these ideas. Okay, reform movements. The first is the Wahhabi movement. Okay, it was essentially a revivalist movement. You know, reform and revivalist. Reform means you are accepting the modern ideas and trying to reform the religion. But revivalist is you are going back to the ancient traditional form of the religion. So, revivalist movement. Abdul Wahab of Saudi Arabia was the person who laid down the foundation of the Wahhabi movement. So, Wahhabi movement's foundation is seen in Saudi Arabia. In India, it was Shah Walilullah, okay, as the leader of the 18th century Wahhabi movement. So you must remember, okay, who expressed who expressed concern at the degeneration which had set in among the Indian Muslims. Okay, so degeneration. Muslims were now going towards the European ideas, and they were going towards the Enlightenment ideas. So Shah Walilullah of India was concerned about these things. Okay, he voiced his anguish at the ugly departures from purity of Islam. He wanted people to follow Islam, which was of the medieval or of the 7th, 8th century. He put forth two principles. He urged desirability of creating a harmony among the four schools of Muslim jurisprudence, which divided the Indian Muslims. He sought to integrate four schools of Muslim jurisprudence, and Shah Walilullah wanted them to be one, because Indian Muslims were divided because of these four schools. He emphasized the roles of individual conscience in religion. Okay, he said the individuals should think and reason in religion. He held that cases where Quran and Hadith could be liable to conflicting interpretations, the individual could make a decision on the basis of his judgment on conscience and on judgment and conscience. So where there was confrontation between Quran and Hadith, okay, between Quran and Hadith, confrontation, he focused on individual decision making and conscience. He did not say that some priest or some leaders will make the interpretation and should be followed by the individuals. He said that it was on the individual judgment and conscience. So he wanted to unite the Muslims, and he focused on individual judgment and conscience. Okay, but you must remember, he was talking about the Indians to go back to the traditional, old, pure form of Islam. So remember, you must remember Abdul Wahab was the person who started the Wahhabi movement, and in India it was Shah Walilullah. Shah Abdul Aziz and Sayyid Ahmad of Barelvi popularized the teachings of Waliyullah. So remember these two names, Sayyid Ahmad of Barelvi. So there is again Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan of Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi of the Wahhabi movement. Okay, they aimed at creating a homeland for Muslims. So this was a radical stance taken. The beginning was made by Abdul Aziz, who gave a fatwa declaring India to be Dar ul Harb. Okay, so he said that this is the land of non-Muslims, which should be made land of Muslims. So this was a radical step taken by Abdul Aziz. Okay, and campaign was initially led against the Sikhs of Punjab. Later, British annexed Punjab, and this campaign was against Britishers. This movement, the Wahhabi movement, was crushed by the Britishers in 1870. So again, to give you a review, it was Abdul Wahab of Saudi Arabia who started the Wahhabi movement. It was taken in India by Shah Waliullah, pure form of Islam. Later, Shah Abdul Aziz and Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi took over, but they were very radical. So this was a radical stance. They gave a fatwa saying that India is Darul Harb. They should make it Darul Islam. Because of this, they fought the Britishers, and the Britishers destroyed or tried to curb the movement in 1870. So this was the radical movement, okay, radical revivalist movement. So you must remember, the Wahhabi is a radical revivalist movement. Coming to Aligarh movement, okay. Muslims, what is the Aligarh movement? Muslim reform. There was a perception in 1850 and 1870 that the Muslims were the main conspirators against the British. 1857 revolt, you must remember. After the 1857 revolt, the British thought that the Muslims were the main conspirators and the British did not give them any privileges. But after 1870, there was change in this attitude of the British. A section of Indian Muslims led by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan prepared to accept official patronage. So Sir Syed Ahmad Khan now was the idea of accepting official patronage. These Muslims felt that Muslim community would forego its shareful right in the administrative services if they shut themselves in a shell and resist modern ideas. So remember, after 1857, the Britishers kept the Muslims away from administration and people or leaders like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan felt that the Muslims should grow and accept modern ideas. And if they do not accept modern ideas and shut themselves, they will reduce. Okay. So you must remember this. They will go backwards. Okay? Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was born in Delhi. Must remember, he was born in Delhi from a respectable Muslim family. He received education in traditional Muslim style. So Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was born in a respectable Muslim family and he received education in the traditional Muslim style. In 1878, he became a member of Imperial Legislative Council. So first time Indians are allowed in 1861 in the Imperial Legislative Council. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was made as a member in 1878. So you have to just remember these facts. Earned him a knighthood. So he got the title of Sir in 1888. He tried to modernize outlook of the Muslims and urged them to accept services under the government. Okay, he condemned the system of Piri and Muridi, the Pirs and the Faqirs, okay, of Islam, The Pirs and the Fakirs claimed to be followers of Sufi school and passed mystic words to their disciples. He condemned slavery. His magazine was Tehzeeb ul Akhlaq, that is improvement of manners and morals. So you must understand, Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan is focusing on So he is focusing on modernity. Okay, so that is why his book Tehzeeb ul Akhlaq, the word of God, he said, should be interpreted as work of God. That is, you should not believe on whatever is said or whatever is said. It should be on the work of God. That is what is seen. So he was focusing on modernity. Okay, so just remember this. So this was not a revivalist movement, this was a reformist movement in Muslims, in Islam. In field of education, at Aligarh in 1875. This later became the Aligarh University in 1920. So just to give you a review on Aligarh movement, initially British were against, or they did not give privileges to the Muslims. After 1870, Sayyid Ahmad Khan accepted official patronage. He got the knighthood in 1888, and he was allowed he was given the membership of Legislative Council in 1878. He wrote the book, his magazine was Tehzeeb ul Akhlaq, which spoke about modernity. He went college in 1875, Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875. Remember these dates, which became Aligarh University in 1920. So today you have the Aligarh University. So we saw the Wahhabi school, Wahhabi movement was revivalist, Aligarh movement was a reformist. There is a third movement which is the Deoband school. In the Wahhabi movement, you must understand, they were Shah Waliyullah, okay, and Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, Shah Abdul Aziz. They were all talking about Islam in the Deoband school. Okay, this is again the revivalist school. The orthodox section of Muslim ulema, who were the standard bearers of Islam learning, organized the Deoband movement. This is by the ulemas, this is by the priest, this is by the teachers, the theologians, okay, of Islam. It was the revivalist movement, like the Wahhabi, okay, whose object were to propagate among Muslims the pure teaching of Quran and Hadith, to keep alive the spirit of jihad against the rulers. Okay, so these were the two ideas or the principles of the Deoband school. So to propagate the pure teaching and to keep the spirit of jihad alive against the foreign rulers. The ulemas were under the leadership of Muhammad Qasim okay, at Deoband in Saharanpur of UP in 1866. So these ulemas, they were under the leadership of Muhammad Qasim Vanotavi. So you must learn these names of the leaders. So Wahhabi leaders, you must understand, Abdul Wahab of Saudi Arabia, Shah Waliyullah of India, Sayyid Ahmad of India. Okay, whereas of Deoband movement, you must remember Muhammad Qasim Vanotavi, okay, at Deoband in Saharanpur district of UP. So that's why it is called as the Deoband school. Object for Muslim community. Okay, that was for the common people, the Wahhabi movement, but this is for the training of the religious leaders, okay, of Muslim community. It is by the ulemas, you must understand. The school curriculum shut out English education and Western culture, imparted original Islamic religion. Okay, and it is by the ulemas. Okay, in politics, the Deoband school welcomed the formation of INC. This is important point. The Aligarh movement by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was against the INC. In 1888, the Deoband ulema issued religious decree, fatwa, against Syed Ahmad Khan's organization. Just a few moments back, I told you Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's motive was modernity, Western education, Western values. So which were those organizations? United Patriotic Association and Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental Organization. So two organizations that you must remember, that is United Patriotic Association and Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental Organization. So the leader Mahmud ul Hassan sought to impart a political intellectual content to religious ideas of the school. So the new leaders here was Mahmud ul Hassan. Okay, so you must remember this name, Mahmud ul Hassan, and he sought to impart a political and intellectual content to the religious ideas of the aspiration. So they spoke about nationalism, but mixing nationalism and Islamic principles. Okay, so this was pro-nationalism, and two names, Muhammad Qasim Vanutavi and Mahmud ul Hassan. Okay, so remember this about the Deoband school. Deoband is a place in UP Muslim reform movements. Three movements that we saw was, first is the Wahhabi, then is the Deoband school, then we so Aligarh movement is the reformist. So in the Hindu Renaissance or Hindu reform movements, we saw Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, and the fourth one was Theosophical movement. Whereas in the Muslim reform movement, we saw the Deoband school, we saw the Wahhabi movement and the Aligarh movement. Okay, so these seven movements you should remember. Now we have the Sikh reform movement. Okay, the Sikh reform movement. You should know. Same, the Enlightenment ideas of the Europe in the 18th century also impacted the Sikhs, not only the Muslims, not only the Hindus, but also the Sikhs. So rational and progressive ideas of 19th century also movement founded in Amritsar. Okay, so 1875 you have many movements happening. Okay, one of which is the Singh Sabha movement in Amritsar. It planned to give Sikhs the benefit of Western education, also counter the proselytizing activities of the or in defense of these two sections. Okay, so the Singh Sabha movement 1873. The Sabha opened a network of Khalsa colleges and schools throughout the Punjab. So today we have many Khalsa college schools. It is because of which is 1873. Okay. Akali movement was offshoot of Singh Sabha movement. Now, Akali movement is of 1921. What is this Akali movement? It aimed to liberate Sikh Gurdwaras who enjoyed support of the government. Okay, so 1921 you have the non-cooperation movement led by Gandhi ji. Now this non-cooperation movement was against the Britishers, and the Akali movement, that the Sikh okay, the Sikh priest. The 1921 Akalis launched non-violent non-cooperation against the Mahans, the corrupt Mahans. So it was non-violent non-cooperation satyagraha against the Mahans. The government had to bow to demand and ask the Akalis was not a communal movement. You should remember, this was not against any religion. The Akali movement was against the corrupt priest in the Sikh religion itself, which was supported by the Britishers. Nor it was just a reformist movement within the Sikh religion. So Singh Sabha movement for Western ideas and education, and the Akali movement for removing corruption. So two movements in the Sikh religion. So we saw in Hinduism, the reform movement was Islam or Muslims, we saw Wahhabi movement, we saw the Deoband school, and then we saw Aligarh movement. In the Sikh religion, it was Akali and the Singh Sabha movement. Okay. Next is in the Parsis. 1851, we have so you have the Rahmani Mazda Yasnan. Okay, so this is the Parsi Sabha, that is the Rahmani Mazda Yasnan. Okay, this is the Sabha or Religious Reform Association for the object of regeneration of social conditions of the Parsis. So you must remember, the Parsis were Zoroastrians. Okay, so to reform or restore the Zoroastrians, we know during the medieval history, the Parsis had come to India after the rise of Islam in Central Asia and Persia. So the Parsis were actually from Iran. They had come to India in medieval times, and they settled in Gujarat and earlier erstwhile Bombay. Okay, so you'll find a lot of Parsis in Mumbai. Okay, so they set up Rahmani Mazda Yasnan. Okay, that is the Religious Reform Association, and it was to restore the Zoroastrian religion. So Zoroastrian is the religion of the Parsis. Okay, so this was by whom? It was by Nauroj Furdonji, Dadabhai Nauroji, and K.R. Kamil. Okay, Dadabhai Nauroji and K.R. Kamil. Okay, Rast Goftar, truth teller, was propagate. This was used to propagate the message. Parsi religious rituals, practices, and creed were redefined, and women's rights were upheld. It was to restore the purity of Zoroastrian religion, and Rast Goftar was the magazine or newspaper which was used to propagate the message. So what did we study till now? We studied in reform in Hinduism, in Hinduism we saw four movements, which is the uh, Ramakrishna Mission, Brahmo Samaj movement, Arya Samaj movement, and we also have seen in Islam we had seen the Deoband school, we had seen the Wahhabi movement and Aligarh movement. In Sikh we saw again the Singh Sabha movement and the Akali movement. As in the parties we saw the message was given in the Rast Goftar. So please revise these things. Lot of factual importance, and in mains they can ask you the various movements in various religion. Now, on a whole, let's see what was the social reform movement. We saw the movement, we saw the reason, we saw the now let's see exactly what was the contribution in various sections or in various areas like women. You have the sati issue which was happening, was the okay, then we have child marriage issue, okay, then we have caste system, slavery. What were the steps taken by the British government, or what was happening in these areas? We know what was the movements. Let's see the steps taken. Ram Mohan Roy. He was a pioneer in modern religious movement. He was the morning star of modern India and was equal to Ramakrishna Mission, Theosophical Society, etc. Okay, so man of India, okay, and is the founder of Brahmo Samaj. Then we have Dayanand Saraswati, okay, Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekanand, Swami Vivekanand, important, okay, by the foreigners. So must remember these movements were going on in the 19th century, which we just dealt with. So there were three distinct phases. Okay, the first phase was of individual revolt and reform together with religious links. The first phase. Okay. Second phase is taking it to a national plane, exemplified by Behramji Malbari and Indian National Social Conference, which was also in around 1880s. Till the 1880s it was individual, later taken up nationally, and the third stage was during the time of the extremist leaders of the 20th century. Okay, so third stage began when social reform was identified with regeneration of traditional extremist leaders come up in 1905. They want to increase the confidence of the Indians. That is why in the after 1905, in the and in the earlier 20th century, this was taken up, social reform was taken up by the leaders. So first is the National Social Conference. Third is the extremist leaders who are taking up the issue. And the fourth and the most important was by Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi gave focus on political reforms, but he also okay. So these are the four phases. So when we started, we saw the overview of what was Indian society. Then we saw two main sections which was there, which is the revivalist and the reformist. Then we have, after a national plane, then we have the extremist leaders trying to create confidence. Then we have Mahatma Gandhi for unity. So you remember these phases. The answer will look very beautiful when you leave these. Regeneration of the Indian society. The main aim of social reform movement in India was to uproot social evils among men and women for good of the society. Thus, work on social reforms for women and against caste restrictions were carried out in the 19th century. What we have seen is, so how we have gone through in this lecture is, so we have seen the background, then we have seen the for the movements in various religion, we saw the various phases. Now various steps taken. Religion, phases, step. This is how your answer should be if asked in the mains exam, and this is how you should study. Okay, now let's see the various steps. So the problems of untouchability came into focus in the 20th century. Okay, we have later. Okay, this will be taught in Mahatma Gandhi and Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Mahatma Gandhi and Baba Saheb Ambedkar, very important names in history, and very people with very high ideals, and who played a very important role in formation of India. So these two people should be studied very. So these two people which we are going to study later. Okay, so remember this. Now coming to the steps taken. Okay, so first is sati. So this comes in the women issues. So what was the rights of the women? Okay, sati means pure. Okay, sati means, the term sati means pure and virtuous woman. Okay, applied in case of devoted wife who cohabitated with her husband. So, the lady or the wife who wanted to or who wished to live her life after death of her husband with her husband. Okay, and this should be proved by burn burning herself with the dead body of her husband. This was very with the husband's fire. This was very cruel. Okay, so purity and virtuousness of a wife could only be proved if she burns herself in the fire or in the fire of the husband. So this was have been seen. And today there is no case of sati. Last we can understand it was in the 1980s. There was one incident in Rajasthan. So you must remember this. Enlightened rulers like Peshwa and Akbar imposed restriction on its performance. So we have the Peshwa impact by of Akbar in Indian society. So British Governor Generals took steps to restrict the practice of sati by discouraging compulsion. So what are the steps taken by British Governor Generals? It is by discouraging compulsion, forbidding administration of forbidding drugs, and could not be asked to conduct sati on pregnant women or below 16 years. So these were the important steps taken, and even there was presence of police officers. These steps. Launched a frontal attack on evils of sati. Court directors encouraged, so court of directors in England, they encouraged William Bentinck to suppress sati, and in December 1829 sati was declared illegal. So very important year to which Sati Act was okay, because of efforts of Rajaram Mohan Roy and also some efforts of William Bentinck, who was the Governor General of India. During this time, he was the Governor General of Bengal. Prohibition of Sati Act. Okay. The next is infanticide. Sati, we know, was killing of the infant at birth. Okay. Female children of the this was against very cruel, and it also led to the sex ratio which was affected. Okay, so when there was a regulation in 1795 and 1804. So you must remember it's 1795 and 1804, and it was considered as murder. Okay, the government later passed an act in 1870 making it compulsory to register the birth. So 1829 sati, then 1795, 1804 and 1870. Of child marriage. So we just saw sati, we saw infanticide. Next is widow remarriage and child marriage. So who played a role in widow remarriage or okay, though he also popularized widow remarriage, but for widow remarriage, His work was rewarded when Hindu Widow Remarriage Act 1856 was passed. Second act that you should remember. First act was Prohibition of Sati Act 1829 and Rajaram Mohan Roy, and Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar 1856. So there was a child was 1872 you have the Civil Marriage Act passed, which is prohibiting child marriage. Then Act 1891. Remember this. So first you have to remember Prohibition of Sati Act 1829, Widow Remarriage Act 1856. Next is Civil Marriage Act to prohibit child marriage. Punishments were put on boys who, or on people who do not follow the marriage age. Okay, and provisions were made for boys under the age of age 18 for boys and 21 for, sorry, 21 for boys and 18 for girls. Okay, so of Europe and America did not exist in India. The Indian slaves were much better in their life. Okay, in India it was bonded servant or bonded labor type. So they had a lot of rights. Slaves had than the people in the West. So considered or treated in a humane way. Okay, humane. So you must remember this. Okay, slavery was abolished in Europe or in British Empire in 1833, and it was inserted in the to abolish slavery in India. In India, slavery was abolished and declared illegal. Penal Code of 1860 also declared slavery illegal. So you must remember, first you must remember, Indian slaves were not that bad, or their condition was not that bad as slavery was abolished in 1833-4. Okay, so there are provisions which does not allow slavery. So what did we okay, we saw the overview. Okay, the steps taken, that is the movements, okay, in various religion. What were the movements? Then we saw the various and the exact steps taken in women education, sati, child marriage, slavery. So this is uh, an overview and can say a somewhat complete description of what are the what was the social reforms and what was the society during the 19th and 20th century, and what steps facing. Okay, in future we'll continue with those lectures. Thank you, thanks a lot, and let's meet the next time.